Welcome to HB Reddit Stories. Today we will see stories of r/am I the a-hole? Am I the a-hole for making my lesbian daughter's children blankets? Throwaway account. Basically I, 52F, have 3 daughters, and 30F, Carrie, 26F, and Jane, 20F. All fake names. When all my girls turned 18, I made them a special blanket. I then made 3 swaddle blankets out of the same materials for their future children. Carrie told me not to because she didn't want kids. I found out later it was because she's a lesbian. I said okay, but made them just in case. Earlier this year, Carrie married her lovely wife, Rory, 28F. Her amazing daughter Diane, 5F, is my 3rd grandchild. I approached Rory and asked if I could give her one of the blankets I made for Carrie's kids, or if she wanted me to make one special for her out of the materials I used to make their wedding living room blanket. I always give these out on the day they're born, so for Diane I plan on giving it on her birthday and was explaining that to her. She told me to ask Diane. I did, and Carrie overheard. I found out that she's pregnant because she was crying and yelling that I didn't respect her wishes, so how can she trust me with her baby? I'm just so confused and hurt. I was trying to do something nice for all my girls, and then my sweet Diane. Instead of being happy I was cautious. Carrie is threatening to go low contact because I don't respect her and am obviously homophobic because how else would I have thought she'd get pregnant, which is very confusing. Rory is telling me it's hormones and that Carrie is emotional because of how hard it was to get pregnant. I didn't know they had been trying, and that she's afraid she's going to lose it. Am I the a-hole? I was trying to be kind. I wasn't being homophobic or trying to be disrespectful. Edit, I don't know if it's relevant, but I still have material from the blankets for patching, so I was planning on adding to Diane's to make it big enough to use, or I was going to let her have it fit her baby dolls. That's what my other 2 granddaughters do now that it's too small for them. Edit 2, I didn't know Carrie was a lesbian until she was 23. I had made all the blankets by the time she was 19. Top comments. Not the a-hole, and I'm a lesbian. If I'm reading this right, you didn't even know that was why she said she didn't want kids at the time you made the blanket. Plus, I am obviously homophobic because how else would I have thought she'd get pregnant? Makes 0 sense. Presumably you were aware that sperm donation existed. OP replies. That's right. I found out about 3 years ago when she began dating Rory. I made them years before that. And also yes. Even when I found out she was a lesbian, there's so many ways for someone to have a baby, including adoption. We had a heart-to-heart when she came out that's why she said she didn't want kids because she never planned on getting married. We live in a conservative area so it's hard for her sometimes, so she never thought she would have them. This is really confusing. But I'm pregnant, and in the first 3 months I was really, something. Was kind of a lot. My poor husband. Maybe give her a little space right now. Maybe put the blankets away. Don't know why she's triggered by blankets. Hold on to the blankets and maybe she will come to see them for what they are, which is a really thoughtful gift. Tell her you love her, you're happy for her, and you'll talk when she's ready. You wanted to show her partner's child she was part of the family. That is so lovely. This is clearly a miscommunication. You're definitely not the a-hole. If she continues to yell about stuff, maybe give her even more space. OP replies. I pick up Diane from school on Mondays, so I'll ask Rory if she thinks Carrie is open to talking about it tomorrow. Maybe she does just need space and a breather. Thank you. No a-hole here. I think this is all a big misunderstanding. Personally, I feel you did the right thing by preparing ahead just in case. It's not homophobic, it was just a bit of foresight that your child might want to have/adopt children of her own one day, regardless of sexuality. I think if she calms down a little, she might be able to reassess. Maybe just having a gentle and honest talk about it with her wife as the mediator might help. It seems like her wife is not as offended and might understand and be able to act as a buffer. Be careful and give her a lot of grace. Especially when the hormones die down and the baby is born, she might genuinely understand what you were trying to do. It can genuinely change everything between a mother and daughter. Next story. Am I the a-hole for refusing to label my wedding cake as vegan because a guest felt tricked? My husband, 32M, and I, 30F, had a vegan wedding because we're both vegan. We made it clear in advance that the food and cake would be plant-based, and no one complained, until the reception. The cake was gorgeous, 3 tiers decorated with edible flowers. Toward the end of the night, one of my husband's aunts, Linda, came up to me looking visibly upset. She said it was disrespectful to have a vegan cake on display because it felt like I was pushing my lifestyle on everyone. I told her the cake wasn't meant to make a statement, it was just the dessert we chose for our wedding. She insisted I either move the cake off the main table or add a sign saying it was vegan so people weren't tricked into eating it. I refused because, 1, it was my wedding, 2, it's a cake, not propaganda, and 3, no one else seemed to care. Linda ended up storming out, and now my in-laws are saying I should have compromised to avoid drama. I think Linda's reaction was ridiculous, but my husband thinks I could have just put up a sign to keep the peace. Am I the a-hole? Top comments. Not the a-hole. The whole thing was vegan. It was your wedding, your choice. I wouldn't feel tricked by eating a vegan cake at all. She has some issues. Let her seethe and be upset. You don't owe her anything. Putting up a sign would have rewarded her bad, entitled behavior. You had no reason to do it. Not the a-hole. The only things you are obligated to include are allergens, dietary and religious food exemptions. Being vegan, unless they are allergic to something like soy, is not something you have to put. In fact, it's actually more time-consuming to label something vegan, because every ingredient has to be outright vetted to be not animal-based to be legally labeled as vegan in the first place. Like kosher or halal, there are rules and guidelines you have to follow. Linda is being incredibly ridiculous, and no, a sign to appease people being dumb is not the answer. This is the kind of person that would have complained, sign or no by the sounds of it. Not the a-hole. Should you also put a sign up if you serve broccoli? You're not tricking anyone into eating something they're allergic to, or tricking vegans into eating a non-vegan cake. This is just absent of certain ingredients. The horror. Next story. Am I the a-hole for embarrassing my aunt at a baby shower instead of showing tact and declining an invitation request more respectfully? My mom and Jenny have been best friends since they were little. We aren't actually related, but I still call her Aunt Jenny. Jenny's daughter, Ellie, is also 16 and Jenny is sadly the kind of mom who thinks Ellie is never wrong. Here were some examples from over the years. Ellie stole a hair ribbon from another girl. The other girl was lying because she was jealous of Ellie. The teacher gave Ellie an F because she didn't do the work. The teacher is also jealous of Ellie. Also, yeah, I know there are bad teachers out there and have had a few myself. But every single one and all the time. Really? Ellie's sister, Annie, hasn't talked to Ellie since moving out? Nothing happened and Jenny has no idea why Annie is refusing contact. Jenny is so in denial about this one especially. Something obviously happened that Jenny doesn't want to admit to. Mom notices this too, but she usually just changes the subject away from Ellie but never says anything about it directly to Jenny because she doesn't want it to hurt the friendship. Jenny usually does take the hint and changes the subject. Mom took me to a baby shower where Jenny happened to be, so they obviously talked and my mom mentioned that me and my friends have a camping trip planned soon. Jenny was openly hinting that she wanted me to invite Ellie too. Mom picked up on it and basically tried inviting Ellie along. So before she finished her sentence I loudly said, "Oh hell no." Jenny clearly wasn't happy, and Mom told me that my trip was cancelled. By the time we got home, she luckily changed her mind about canceling the trip but was still pissed at me. I said that her and Jenny have been friends forever, but I didn't choose to be Ellie's friend, and didn't want her coming along. Mom said she knows I don't have a great opinion of Ellie and that she knows Ellie has plenty of issues, but I should have declined respectfully instead of embarrassing Jenny and was capable of saying something like, "Sorry, I would prefer nobody else come since we don't have room or supplies for another person / my friends aren't comfortable with someone they know well coming along." I realize I could have been more respectful, but I was also trying to put a stop to that immediately. Also, we got some looks, just because I admit I was pretty loud, but everyone outside of Jenny and Mom seemed to move on almost immediately. So I think she's turning the embarrassment into a bigger deal than it actually was. Am I the a-hole? Top comments. Not the a-hole. A lot are going with you are the a-hole, but I'll say something about the hint hint, nudge nudge crowd, especially when they're in denial. They ignore soft no's. Could you have been more polite, at least for the first one? Sure, but would it have worked? And, as this wasn't just your trip, you had a responsibility to hold the group's boundaries. OP replies. Soft nose is the perfect word for it. If you try to indirectly say no with Ellie, she finds a solution. So for example, if I said we didn't have enough space or supplies for another person, 90% of the time Jenny would say something like, oh, I can pay for the extra/carpool. Maybe it was immature like the you are the a-hole comments are saying, so I get that. But it also was a guaranteed way to put a stop to it. Not the a-hole. Yeah, it's easy to say you could have been more tactful in hindsight, but you're 16. I can't expect you to always remember to be mindful and tactful, especially in situations like this when you're being pressured. I can easily imagine a 16-year-old overreacting and not being aware of their surroundings. Your mother is the one who turned this into an awkward situation. You were ignoring Jenny's hints rather well until your mom butted into the situation and escalated it. Not only did she not even give you time to come up with a proper excuse, she also added more pressure on you to invite her. In hindsight she can say, oh, you could have come up with an excuse, but how would you have known at the time she would have let it go and accepted the excuse since despite knowing how you feel about Ellie she decided to try and invite her on the trip as well. Your mother has previously been completely capable of turning the conversation away from Ellie in the past, so why didn't she use this skill to support her daughter? She added the pressure and made the stakes higher. Your overreaction is probably the only thing that stopped them from pushing more, because it feels like even had you come up with an polite excuse, they would have still pushed the issue, but your oh hell no made it awkward and impossible for them to keep it going. OP replies. Like I said, Mom usually changes the subject when it comes to Ellie, because she doesn't want to say anything negative about Ellie or could hurt the friendship. But sometimes she will agree to things with Ellie to keep the peace with Jenny. It's never involved me and my social group like this before though. Not the a-hole, but it should really be justified a-hole. While yes, it could have been handled more tactfully, something tells me that Aunt Jenny is the kind of person who pushes people to accept Ellie. She would have said stuff like Ellie is just one person. It won't be too hard to accommodate one more. Or that Ellie just wants to bond or some crap like that. Sometimes an emphatic no is needed to nip that in the bud. OP replies. Yeah, the big problem with Jenny is that she never takes the hint when it comes to soft no's with Ellie. 90% of the time she comes up a solution to the indirect no. Next story. Am I the a-hole for telling my pregnant friend I can't stand her complaining anymore? I want to start off by saying that I, F29, am 7 months pregnant myself. My friend Cassie, 25F, is also pregnant, and about 7 weeks ahead of me. At first it was awesome being pregnant together. We'd vent about things, talk about how excited we are, plan mommy-to-be dates, etc. But now her attitude has been rubbing me the wrong way and I can't stand talking to her about it anymore. She's gone from occasional venting to texting me upwards of 5 times a day about every horrible symptom she has. What bothers me is that I also have a lot of the same irritating pregnancy symptoms, but when I try to sympathize she pulls the oh just wait until you're at ______ weeks card as if it's some strange competition. So I dropped the sympathy angle and decided to just send her positive messages instead. But she totally sidesteps my attempts at positivity or my suggestions and complains about something else. For example, if I suggested a medicine I took for heartburn she'd reply, no, I'll just throw it up. If I tried to suggest that she take some time off work because she's clearly unhappy, she'd reply, I can't, I don't have enough sick days. Which is fair, I guess, but it gets old very quick being shot down over and over. She ignores all my upbeat messages about staying strong and that she's almost there and that she can do it and replies with I'm miserable instead. What pushed me over the edge is she also stopped asking me about my pregnancy completely. Never checks in with me, never asks about my baby, and when I try to share anything positive she hardly acknowledges it. I went from feeling like we were in this together to feeling like she is the only pregnant one. I finally snapped when she texted me about her swollen ankles for the 20th time and said that I'm already anxious enough with my own due date creeping up and that her negativity is ruining my own pregnancy. I told her that I'm not feeling great either, but I'm not sending her lists of ailments every morning, and I suggested she start venting to her husband instead. I obviously hurt her feelings. She read it and hasn't spoken to me since. I feel completely justified, but my husband said I shouldn't have said anything, that she's clearly struggling more, and that I should just basically treat her with pity because she's so unhappy. I think she's a total downer and I don't need that energy weighing me down, but now I'm wondering if I'm being insensitive because she is so close to giving birth and clearly having more complications than I am. Am I the a-hole? Top comments. Does she think she's the first pregnant person ever? She sounds obnoxious. The last trimester of pregnancy sucks for everyone. I guarantee once her baby is born she's going to act like she's the only one kept up all night by a newborn. Then the only one whose baby cries a lot from teething. Then the only one with a toddler who throws random tantrums. The list goes on. You are not the a-hole. And congratulations. Opie replies. This was how I felt. I'm not minimizing her troubles, but I'm pretty sure all pregnant women have a rough go lol, and now I am worried about her comparing our babies after they're born. Not the a-hole, this sounds like a real pain to deal with and you already have enough of those. Venting is the kind of thing that should be either brief or mutual, imho. Hers is all the time and all about her, which is not okay. Also, mention to your husband that she isn't actually clearly struggling more, as you deal with all the same problems she does, as you mentioned up top, and you don't have the bandwidth to play silent listening ear on top of that. If she wants to have an actual conversation where you both are heard, she knows where to find you. Not the a-hole. She sounds insufferable. Pregnancy can be miserable. The last 6 to 8 weeks were awful for me with both of my kids. That doesn't mean I only talked about that or tried to one-up people. I think boundaries should be set now. Can you imagine how she's going to be once your babies are born? It will either be that her baby never sleeps and you have no idea how hard she has it. Or her baby is a great sleeper and she rubs it in your face. Then she'll compare when they start crawling, talking, walking, etc. Opie replies. That was my exact line of thinking. I'm worried she's going to be comparing them after birth too. Next story. Would I be the a-hole for not deleting my son's baby pictures? My 45F son, 18M, has transitioned from a female to a male about 4 to 5 years ago. I, myself, thought that it's a little too early to start transitioning, but I didn't say anything and decided to be supportive. After all, that's my child. Anyway, a few days ago, my son saw me scrolling through my camera roll and yelled at me because I was tearing up at his baby pictures, where he was still dressed extremely femininely and was obviously a girl. I wasn't crying at it because he isn't a girl anymore, I was crying because time flies. He told me that by me keeping those photos as memories, I am totally disregarding the fact that he is no longer a girl and I am transgender phobic. Info: at the time I was looking at the pictures, my son wasn't near. I would never look at those around him because that's a big boundary of his. Edit: I don't appreciate the backlash on my son. Please keep those harsh opinions off of him. My heart was saddened by this because that is the last thing I will ever be. I have open arms to anyone and everyone. I personally believe that it's not fair for me to delete the photos because those are some of the only memories I have of him when he was an infant/kid. Please give me some feedback if I'm the a-hole or not, and whether I should delete them. Top comments. My daughter started transitioning at 18, MTF. I still have her baby pics and enjoy looking at them occasionally, but they also make me sad because that little boy doesn't exist anymore. I would never delete them, and she'd never ask, but I also don't share them. Opie replies. I feel you on being sad that that version of them doesn't exist anymore. I don't express to my son that I'm sad he's not a girl anymore, but at some moments it does make me sad that I couldn't enjoy the teenage years with my daughter, but a son. Obviously I love the new version of him as well. I just wish it wasn't so complicated to feel this way. Not the a-hole, even if you were crying over the change, that's allowed too. You support your son, but it's normal to grieve what you lost too. But what it could comes down to is that you're allowed to keep your memories. You son is a young man. 18 years ago he was a baby, but that changed. Looking at baby pictures doesn't make him a baby now. Looking at pictures when he presented a girl doesn't make him a girl now. I think it's fair that he requests that you not look at those photos around him because he's allowed to be upset by them. I think it's unreasonable to demand you delete those photos just because they upset him. But given that he wants you to delete them rather than just keep them away from him, that's unreasonable. Not the a-hole. Don't delete them, they are your memories. I would highly recommend you back them up though, or at least password lock your reels. Some kids are a bit too entitled and won't hesitate to resort to self-help to get what they want. Not the a-hole, but as they are so early in their transition, put those things that remind them of the past away for safekeeping. If you want to look at them, be kind and try not to reminisce when they are present, so that they won't feel uncomfortable. One day, they may even ask for a few of them. Opie replies. At the time I started looking at the photos, my son was in his room. The only reason he even knew I was looking at them is because he came out for a snack. I hope you guys liked this video. If you did, make sure like, comment, share and subscribe the channel HB Reddit Stories.